Even if my Pokemon Grand Prix is over, I could not resist doing another round of this because I think that first episode has got to be definitively the best video on this channel art-wise, so far at least. And there are a few more things I wanted to experiment with to try and make my Titan drawings even better. So I took some suggestions from the previous video's comment section and made some more Pokemon Titans today. I'm also open to even more suggestions for another round of this, and if you're new here and you do want a third episode, make sure to subscribe to help encourage me to do another round. But for now, part 2, let's go! Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show.
The situation in Dimension K005 has kept getting worse. Ever since Godzilla, one of the alpha titans of this world, started taking its power nap to charge up and recover, more and more titans have been popping up and causing problems. And one of them that showed up actually teleported itself into this world from another dimension. Any monster that can do that is not just real bad news for this world, but a threat to the whole multiverse. Folks are calling this thing Palsuda, and at least for now it seems to be sticking around this world, but I don't know if that's good news or bad news. It does seem to be fighting the more destructive titans at least. It teleported itself right to Nidozilla as the purple brute was stomping its way through Chicago. I'll be honest, at a glance I would have thought Nidozilla could handle this thing no problem. Even if it is a bit shorter than Palsuda, its hide is a heck of a lot tougher looking. But the new teleporting titan took down Nidozilla like a grown-up fighting a toddler. Even though it's got wings that don't look anywhere near big enough to help it fly, this thing was able to get itself airborne with almost no effort. I guess its wings are really just there for guiding its movements in the air, not actually to be flapped to make it fly. It got itself around Nidozilla's back, grabbed it by its dorsal plates and horn, and flew it 2 miles above the city. Then just dropped it. But that's why I ain't so sure this Palsuda guy is really helping much, or is secretly just another Titan demon made by Kaijagrax, one of the 7 Archon demons attacking a bunch of different worlds of the multiverse. Palsuda may be fighting dangerous titans, but by doing things like just dropping Nidozilla onto a massive city, he basically just hit Chicago with an asteroid, took out the whole downtown area in a single shot. Palsuda dive-bombed Nidozilla after that, stomped its head farther into the dirt, then bit right through the titan's neck and tore its head off, tossing the thing across the city and destroying even more buildings in the process, probably killing a bunch more people too. Of course, there is some evidence to show that this thing might have been a titan that's been around for a long time, too. I met up with some folks in this world that run a group called Monarch, who study titans and help out some of the good ones. This lady named Eileen Andrews, who works with the other resident alpha titan of this world, Kong, told me they had some potential records of Palsuda, along with 2 other titans it's associated with, having been part of the very creation of their world in all time and space. That's obviously a pretty big claim, but I guess I can't rule it out. Different dimensions could have been made in different ways. Besides, either way, if this thing's gonna help fighting other titans, that is cool and all, but the real question is, will it keep fighting them in massively populated areas? Because whether this thing was made by Kaijagrax or not, if it's causing massive destruction and deaths as it fights, then it's probably doing exactly what that demon wants. Palkia was suggested by a few people, or some people said either Palkia or Dialga, but Palkia just had a bit more of a kaiju titan kind of look to me, and for this episode, I wanted to do a few drawings where I experimented with destruction, like active destruction happening in the piece, not just previously destroyed buildings in the background. But I also wanted to make sure to have one really good kaiju drawing, titan drawing, like the stuff I did in that last episode. So with Palkia, I just went a little bit more standard, or I guess by the standard I set quality-wise in the last episode. Looking up at the Titan, destroyed buildings in the background, making it more menacing and monstrous looking. I'm just noticing as I'm doing this description that I didn't reference that it's a water-type Pokemon, hence having some water flying off its head. But whatever, I still like that. It looks cool. It helps emphasize some of the movement on this drawing. But overall, I do think this drawing looks really cool in the end, but you know, feels a little bit standard. Again, by the standard I set in that last episode, so I still think it looks awesome. It just doesn't feel, I don't know, I guess new and special like the last episode did, but it also did exactly what I needed it to. It looks awesome and made me confident enough to go, okay, with the next drawings I can do some experimenting with some new things, and that ends up producing some very interesting results. Kong had been licking its wounds after it had fought Nidozilla recently, but it was ready enough to get back out there and fight more titans that were appearing. Ms. Andrews and a few other Monarch folks were planning to direct Kong to this giant bat titan called Noivern, but they knew they had to help him take it out. See, this flying titan was like a dragon out of my buddy Tayron's world, but about 5 times the size, and could shoot sonic blasts out of its ears and mouth that they figured could make Kong go deaf in one shot. They quickly rigged up this gear that was like a set of big old earplugs for Kong, but they'd only block out sound over a certain decibel, so he could still hear. It was pretty quick thinking, but turned out losing his hearing wasn't the real risk with this new titan. They wanted to send Kong after this thing while it was between major cities, in a countryside or something to minimize casualties and damage. But while they were busy strategizing, another set of titans showed up in its territory, and Noivern was gunning for him pretty quick. These two floating, two-armed, stony, metallic-looking titans dug themselves out of the ground right near the edge of London, England, and just started floating through the city, destroying every building that their bodies even just grazed. As soon as these things, that Monarch started calling the Metamono, popped up, Noivern must have sensed them because it flew right for them, and soon enough those two were duking it out with the bat right in the middle of London, and Noivern quickly showed off what its sound waves could really do. Targeting the Metamono, Noivern blasted a cannon of sound that obliterated every building in its path, then knocked the Metamono right out of the sky. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to take out the Metamono, and soon after being hit, the two of them flew right at each other and merged together. Their bodies combined to make one bigger Metamono with 4 legs. By this point, Monarch had sent Kong after him to try and end this fight as fast as possible. He climbed up through the closest Hollow Earth tunnel to the fight and showed up as Metamono was doing a pretty good job dodging Noivern sound waves. Kong got in there with an axe made out of one of Godzilla's dorsal plates that he charged up with some kind of crazy titan energy in the Hollow Earth, and managed to chop some of Noivern toes off with his first swing, which really made the bat mad. It blasted Kong with a long, constant sound cannon that may not have hurt his ears thanks to the tech from Monarch, but it did hurt the rest of him. He was sent flying through the London Eye right into the River Thames, with the bat then flying above and using the sound to just blast him down into the water. Luckily, that distracted the bat from Metamono, who hovered right over him, then just dropped its massive metal stony body onto it, crashing Noivern right into the water. Metamono pinned the thing under the water and just held it there. When Kong stood up, since the river was shallow enough for him to just stand in, he just waited and let Metamono drown the bat. Unfortunately, the bat managed to shoot a cannon of sound that pushed it and Metamono up out of the water. Then it just flew off. Kong tried to leap up and grab its tail, but the water dulled his jumping skills enough for the bat to get away. Metamono could have flown after it, but surprise surprise, it stuck around to face off with Kong instead. Now Kong's advantage is usually that he's a lot smarter than other titans, but turned out Metamono was pretty smart too. Now my intent with this drawing was for people to look at it and just hear a sound like a shockwave is hitting you as you're looking at this drawing. And I think I might have gotten there with this. I knew that I wanted to have Noivern kinda centered and shooting sound towards us, and 2 buildings that are helping frame him also getting obliterated by the sound wave. And this really feels like it has helped unlock a new level for my drawings, like with active destruction happening in them, which I'm definitely going to experiment with a bunch in 2024. But there's also things in this drawing that I'm like, okay, I know I want to do things differently with this concept in the future. For one thing, I do kinda wish that I'd made the buildings further into this destruction, like jump 1 second farther into the future where more of the debris is getting blasted away. And I also could not for the life of me decide which version of this was better, one with the sound waves actually coming from Noivern towards us, or one where I just put a little bit of speed lines around the character pointing in towards him. Because on the one hand, the sound waves actually being in the image help sell the idea that he is shooting a cannon of sound, whereas without them it kinda looks like he could be causing a shockwave by flapping his wings or something. but also the sound waves feel a little bit distracting from the buildings that I do think ended up looking pretty cool, even if the glass on them looks a little bit like it's just painted onto the building instead of being a different material than the concrete. But I don't know, I really could not pick, so I ended up putting both versions up to show at the end of this. And I don't know if this would be my new favorite drawing of the year. I think I might still like Lycanroc Midnight Form from the last episode better, and maybe even Nidoking better in the last episode. Probably have to take a few days before I decide, but I do feel like this drawing is a very special one for helping me unlock a new level with my art that's going to be very fun to play with going forward.
Because I couldn't decide which version of Noivern I liked better, I decided to put both up as posters on my Teespring store, along with the other art in this episode as well. If you want this art as posters, I'll have it linked in the description, and on my Teespring store there's tons of other posters, sweaters, shirts, and fun stuff like that. Or if you want hard copies of tons of my art, blah blah blah, Monsters of the Multiverse, art book ad that I've done a bunch of times, but there is a ton of really cool Pokemon art in here. Anyway, back into the last Titan, let's go.
Metamono got a grip on Kong's movements pretty fast and was soon dodging every attack Kong swung at it. Of course, that just made Kong want to try and step up its speed. It finally managed to get a slash into Metamono's arm with its axe, but that didn't make Metamono as mad as we would have thought. It hovered up higher away from Kong and just seemed to analyze the cut. Then it hovered back down and stopped dodging Kong's attacks. Kong slammed his axe right down onto the thing's head and it dropped to the ground. Looked almost like Kong had taken it out with one hit, but then we saw that the glowing energy from Kong's axe got sucked right out of his weapon into Metamono. He pulled his axe out, but it was too late. Metamono had used the energy in the axe to level itself up. Its arms shifted onto its back, and it grew another set of 4 arms that were even bigger. Spikes grew out of its wrists and its chin, and it shot up into the air way faster than it had flown before. Guess whatever energy Kong can charge his axe up with has the power to make some Titans transform into even more powerful versions of themselves. And Kong wasn't ready for that. This Mega Metamono flew around Kong like a shot and dug its claws into his back, then started biting and tearing into the ape's flesh with its mouth. Kong swung his axe behind him, but now this thing's hide was too strong for the blade to do anything, so it just clanged off him. Kong chucked his axe aside, then slammed his back down onto the ground behind him as hard as he could. That was finally enough to loosen Mega Metamono's grip. Kong quickly spun around, stomped his feet onto 2 of the thing's arms, grabbed them with his opposable toes, then grabbed the other 2 with his hands. Mega Metamono flew them both up into the air, flipped over, and slammed Kong into the ground. But Kong kept holding its limbs and was pulling with all his strength. Mega Metamono started shrieking, and clearly Kong was getting close to ripping its arms off, and no matter how many times Mega Metamono slammed him into the ground, Kong wasn't letting up. But unfortunately, Mega Metamono had a backup plan. Its whole body started building up with blue energy. Kong just kept pulling and pulling, but finally, as he ripped 2 of the thing's arms out, Metamono self-destructed in an explosion that leveled almost all of London. Metamono was left in pieces after that, but Kong was also left basically comatose. They say his heart hasn't totally stopped, but even if he can recover, like Godzilla, it's probably gonna take him a while. So for now, this world's got no Alpha Titan protector, and we just gotta hope that no more new Titans pop up. But I do have an idea we could try. There are some Titans in my world, or Kaijus as we call them there, that have been trained to fight alongside us. Maybe some of them could help with whatever battles are coming to this world. Now with Metagross here, I wanted to try a different kind of destruction where it was more passive. Like in the last one, the Titan was actively destroying the buildings with its sound attack, whereas in this one I wanted it to be like Metagross was kind of flying through the city and its arm just kind of happened to hit a building and it doesn't even really care or notice. And I love that idea, and I think it comes across really well in this drawing, and I love how I did the destruction in this, but the one little notch against it is I'd say that, to me, is the coolest looking part of the drawing, and it's a little bit too small and off to the side, which makes sense because that's what I was trying to do. This was supposed to be like passive destruction that the Titan doesn't even really notice is happening, so the fact that the audience at a glance could kind of miss this too fits with the tone I was going for, But just because the destruction I think looks so cool, I kind of want it to be a bigger part of the piece. And I rendered this a little bit differently from the last one. For one, I actually inked the building that was being destroyed in the last one so that I could have a little bit more freedom to try and change things around through the process of the drawing. I didn't even ink those buildings, I just made them as their own layer in front of everything else. And part of the thought process behind that is that when you ink something completely, which I do in most of my drawings unless something is far in the background, that can make it look a little bit too rigid and take away some movement from a piece. But lately I've been trying this thing where I add movement lines onto things that are moving after I've done the rendering, so I can use the finished color and shading of lighting to make movement lines that are the same color as the finished piece. And I think that helps add a bit of movement to even pieces that have complete inking to them. But then also the fact that I add in some smoke puffs that are kind of coming off this building as it's being destroyed, and the ring of cracked glass helping to sell the, I don't know, like the part where the building's being destroyed. All of that I think looks really, really cool, and I'm almost thinking now I want to try, if this gets another episode or even in a different kaiju episode or something like that, having something like a Machamp style Titan that is actively punching a hole through a building, rendered in the same kind of way that I did the destruction in this piece. I think that could look insanely cool. So even though this definitely isn't my favorite drawing from the last two videos, I do love the result of it, and I think it has also helped set up some new cool stuff that I'm going to further experiment with in the future that I think is going to help level up my art even more.
If you enjoyed this, you might want to check out the first episode in this series, or you might enjoy something like my most recent Godzilla Monsters as Dragons episode. But I also have tons of other cool Pokemon art in here, Godzilla monster art on here. I'll link a bunch of related videos in the pinned comment. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote I read this week from Tom Bilyeu, who said the reason it bothers you when other people don't like you is because you're not so sure you like yourself. When you develop mental and physical habits to help you become the kind of person you really want to be, and you genuinely really like yourself, it starts to matter less and less if other people you meet or interact with don't like you. So if it is bothering you that someone doesn't like you, maybe just take that as a sign that you need to do some internal work on yourself to become someone that you really, really like. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday, which is finally a long requested sequel to my Five Nights at Freddy's zombie apocalypse story.